This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and this is my weekly review of the points I find interesting in Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. There's a lot in here that I don't talk about because I don't really find it interesting. But there's a lot of news this week. Lots going on with AEW, WWE, and of course I'll start off with there's a bit more information on Billy Graham, WWE Hall of Famer, former world champion who passed away last week. The funeral is going to be next Thursday, June 1st at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's going to be at the Full Life Church in Chandler, Arizona, open to fans. And Meltzer brings up that Billy passed away from multiple organ failures and sepsis. And he had been in the hospital for the past 4 or 5 months with a huge amount of health issues. Apparently, he had 6 hip replacement surgeries in his life. Wrestling definitely takes its toll. Triple H apparently says that nobody had more wrestlers imitate him than Graham. Hogan, Flair, and Jesse all put out statements about Graham. Jesse and Hogan said that Graham were the reasons they got into wrestling. That's Jesse Ventura. Meltzer brings up that other than Bob Backlund and Bruno Sammartino, who had much, much longer runs as headliners at Madison Square Garden, nobody had more sellouts than Billy Graham, who had the highest percentage of sellouts, 95%. He had more sellouts than Jim Londos, Hulk Hogan, John Cena, or anyone else for that matter. And it's also noteworthy that his 2 non-sellouts were at over 17,000 fans, where now WWE will call a MSG sellout 12,500. And Meltzer also notes for most of these sellouts, MSG used to have a rule that kids 14 and under were not allowed to attend Madison Square Garden. So if they had allowed kids, back then a sellout would be over 21,000. And oftentimes he'd also sell out the Felt Forum, which would be another 3 or 4,000. But Meltzer brings up that if kids were allowed, they probably would have had more than 17,000. And again, they'll call a sellout now at 12,500. Hulk Hogan was interviewed by Ariel Helwani, and I did watch this interview. And in this interview, he said Shane McMahon wanted him to wrestle Shane at WrestleMania 39, but Hogan turned it down, but did say he was interested in wrestling Steve Austin at WrestleMania 40. It's funny that apparently Shane told Hogan he just needs to stand there and Shane would do the rest. But Shane actually got severely injured at WrestleMania like 15 seconds into a match last year by just doing a leapfrog. So Shane's best physical days are also behind him. Hulk Hogan is promoting his weed and mushroom products, magic mushrooms. It is funny that he did say in this that weed and magic mushrooms are safer than pharmaceuticals. Now, I'm not a doctor. I think pharmaceuticals, weed and mushrooms. I've never tried mushrooms, so I can't speak on it. I have known some people that have had very, very bad experiences and trips on mushrooms, and others that have had positive things. I think anything in moderation can be safe. A lot of people get addicted to pharmaceuticals. People can get addicted to weed. People can have bad trips on weed. I stopped using weed after taking a drink and having a horrible experience. So for him to say that weed and magic mushrooms are safer than pharmaceuticals, you can die off of pharmaceuticals. I do agree with that, and there's some highly addictive pharmaceuticals. But I mean, you can have some really bad experiences on mushrooms. Weed overall seems to be fairly safe, but you can have bad trips on weed. So I'm just throwing that out there as someone that has had some bad trips on weed. Overall, in small doses, weed can be relaxing, but if you're not used to it, you can have bad experiences. So for him to make the blanket statement that magic mushrooms and weed are safer than pharmaceuticals, maybe if you get addicted to pharmaceuticals. I mean, I've been after I had knee surgery from amateur wrestling. I had some pharmaceuticals prescribed to me that I didn't get addicted to and had no bad experience. So I mean, it depends on the person and it depends on moderation. Um, but yeah, I had one friend that literally went crazy on magic mushrooms. So to say that overall magic mushrooms are safer, I don't know about that. And you really, I wouldn't recommend to anybody to take magic mushrooms by themselves for the first time. I mean, I haven't done them, but I've researched them, and I mean, they can be highly dangerous. They're a hallucinogenic drug. Um, they are a natural drug where you're basically poisoning yourself, and I'm not hating on them. I've heard good things about them, but for Hogan to just say magic mushrooms are safer, the doctor prescribed pharmaceuticals, I don't know, guys. I really would have a hard time believing that. And that's one of the reasons why I would be hesitant. Well, other than they're legal in Canada, even though there's magic mushroom shops, I'd be hesitant to try mushrooms. I know they are legal in some states. All right, let's get back into the WWE news. WWE CEO and future TKO, WWE president TKO, of course, is the combined company of UFC and WWE. Tony Khan did some media calls this past week. Some noteworthy stuff of those media calls is when WWE negotiates their new television rights deals. He said he's open to moving Raw from Monday and adding a third hour to SmackDown uh, if the right price is offered by a television network. They're also open to changing NXT from a developmental show to a real show. I think NXT really has a stink on it now of being a bad show. Back when it was using like the talent that AEW is using now, it did have a period of popularity. But now to change it from, I mean, I've tried to watch it. Braun Breaker is great, but overall the show is terrible, worse than Raw and SmackDown. And I have a hard time watching Raw and SmackDown, but I'm not even going to try to watch NXT again, other than if it's for a single match. I mean, I watched the Rock's daughter's debut match over WrestleMania weekend, and I didn't even enjoy watching that. But anyways, I'm just saying it might be hard to create a legitimate brand out of that since it's gotten so bad in recent years. He also notes that they're working on new UK media rights deals. Speaking of NXT, Shawn Michaels said right now NXT Europe is on hold. We'll see now that Endeavor's taken over WWE if they'll be willing to do NXT Europe, since NXT UK was a financial disaster. They said Braun Breaker still has some matches to have in NXT, so he's on hold being called up to the main roster. Of course, a lot of people think the reason why he didn't debut on the main roster yet is because of the situation with his father, WrestleMania weekend, and the transgender wrestler. That basically was the biggest story to come out of WrestleCon. As I said yesterday in my news, Braun Breaker, I think, should be the one to dethrone Roman Reigns. He has the bigger upside than anybody in NXT, and he's a lot younger than Cody Rhodes. WWE SmackDown in Calgary has 6,662 pre-sold for August, which is over double the pre-sale of Collision in Calgary. Raw in Winnipeg is over 7,000, which AEW only got 7,000, even with Chris Jericho for Dynamite there a few months ago. The SmackDown in Toronto has over 12,000 August 18th, same arena AEW is going to, which is their first time doing a TV taping in Toronto in a long time. Raw in Quebec City has over 9,000 pre-sold, which is the first ever WWE TV taping in Quebec City ever. Fast X featuring John Cena grossed over 67 million in the US alone over the weekend, 318 million worldwide. So it's pretty cool that Guardians of the Galaxy the past couple of weeks was the number one at the box office, and now Fast X, both movies featuring wrestlers. I did try and watch, honestly, an interview with John Cena a couple days ago talking about wrestling and movies, and I have to say, I lasted through the Hogan one, which I actually found interesting, but John Cena, I maybe lasted 5 minutes. I respect him, and he's definitely a megastar. Him and Batista are the two best known wrestling stars since The Rock, as far as mainstream. So I congratulate them on their success, but I just find John Cena boring for whatever reason. I find his interviews boring. According to WrestleNomics, the median age of NXT is now 57. Raw, the median age is 52. SmackDown, the median age is 55. AEW, the median age is 53. Dynamite, the median age is 50. Women of Wrestling, the median age is 61. So there's not. I think wrestling fans are still overall wrestling fans that were fans in the 80s boom period. I don't know if there's that many younger fans watching wrestling. It's a lot of us that fell in love with it during the period when it was really good and still watch it because it reminds us of our childhood or whatever. But those are some pretty high median ages. Regarding AEW, CM Punk is returning on Collision from the United Center in Chicago. Back in May, there was an issue because Ace Steel, who is, I guess, the equivalent of Brutus Beefcake to CM Punk, however, far, far, far less popular than Brutus Beefcake ever was. Apparently, there was a delay in CM Punk agreeing to be part of this because AEW doesn't want Ace Steel to be an agent at the actual shows. However, they did hire him back as an agent. Apparently, he was the only one fired from the behind-the-scenes brawl last year due to hitting Nick Jackson hard in the head with a chair and biting Kenny Omega so deep that the teeth marks were still in his forearm 2 weeks later. Now, keep in mind, Ace Steel is a lot bigger than Nick Jackson, and he is the only one that used a weapon or bit in that fight. So, I mean, they must really want CM Punk back to allow that, because other than Invader, you honestly, and I guess Jacques Rougeau with the roll of quarters, you rarely hear of weapons being used in backstage wrestling fights. However, I guess every single time there's been a weapon used, Jacques Rougeau remained under contract. Invader remained employed after killing Brody. And now Ace Steel, who used a chair, is hired back by AEW. So, guys, it looks like using a weapon in backstage fights is no big deal. Apparently, there's about 4,000 tickets out now for Collision at the United Center with CM Punk. It was not the instant sellout like CM Punk's 2021 return is. Apparently, the Wintrust Arena, whereas the last time CM Punk wrestled for AEW, it was at the Wintrust Arena with only about 3,500 in attendance, can hold 7,000. The Now Arena can hold 10,000. And the Allstate Arena can hold 12,000. So apparently for the United Center, they're looking for about 12,000 or more to merit holding it there. Otherwise, they could have done the show in a smaller arena. The other big stars of Collision are Miro, who they've hardly used. Samoa Joe, good wrestler. Thunder Rosa, who's hardly been used and is still injured. I'm not sure she's a draw at all. Scorpio Sky, who I don't even really know who that is. Apparently, Collision was requested by head of Warner Brothers Discovery, David Zalso, and part of the deal is AEW programming will be only for Warner Brothers Discovery in the U.S. The June Collision show in Toronto, the same arena that has 12,000 tickets for SmackDown, has only 1,600 tickets out for Collision right now, including comps. In Hamilton, including comps, there's only 646 tickets out. That's an 18,000 seat arena. And in Regina, which is a small arena, and nothing comes to Regina, guys. Regina is like the middle of nowhere. It's got a good population, but this is the first TV taping there for wrestling since WWE Superstars was taped there in the early 90s, and they only have 1,300 tickets out, including comps. Calgary has the biggest for AEW's debut in Calgary, 3,000 tickets out. And for US and Newark, there's 3,700 tickets out, which is lower than the Dynamites have been getting, but that's not bad. But it is the New York City market, which is huge. So basically, Meltzer says that they believe that Punk had a lot of leverage to come back, whatever deal was reached. He probably got extra pay for signing a non-disclosure regarding the backstage fight. But these low ticket sales for Collision are probably one of the reasons, because enthusiasm isn't really that big for Rampage or for Collision, and Rampage is dropping to all-time lows lately. So it's like Dynamite ratings were up this week with Sabu appearing, but overall Dynamite has been down. Rampage is like gone hugely down, and so it's like you're adding another show instead of just focusing on trying to make Rampage better. But I understand they're getting an increase in money for this show, so I don't blame them for taking it. Even Double or Nothing at the T-Mobile Arena, they've had deals for 4 tickets for $40, and ticket sales are under 8,000 for the pay-per-view. Their video game Fight Forever is going to be released on June 29th. Dynamite did a 0.32 rating from Las Vegas this week in front of a little under 4,000 fans. NXT did a 0.16 rating. Raw from Hershey, Pennsylvania did 8,100 fans. Most Wanted Treasures was down to 0.08. Stone Cold Takes on America, only a 0.05, which is about what Women of Wrestling usually gets. So Stone Cold, it's safe to say his show is bombing. Rampage did a 0.09 rating, no Impact rating released. They may not have even done a 0.01. SmackDown did a 0.53 rating in Columbia, South Carolina, before 8,800 fans. Mercedes Moné had an ankle injury at the New Japan Women's Title Tournament, May 25th in Long Beach. So the LA area, it was not sold out. They had 2,900 fans. I just find it funny, and I do like Meltzer overall, but he said that the biggest star they could get other than Punk before Collision would be Mercedes Moné. But they didn't. I mean, she did make a difference. Apparently, when she was announced for this New Japan show, they sold. It started off with only 1,200 tickets out, and when she was announced, there was a boost in ticket sales. They ended up with 2,900, but it wasn't sold out. It was a small building, and there was still over 800 tickets open. So how can you say she's a bigger draw than Goldberg? Goldberg in the LA area would have sold out 3,000, no problem. Goldberg on any of these Collision shows would make a bigger difference than CM Punk. I understand he's more expensive, but like Goldberg is a bigger draw than Sasha Banks or CM Punk. Guaranteed. The haters can argue that, but the fact is Goldberg is a household name. People know who Goldberg is more than Roman Reigns. Dark Side of the Ring debuts next Tuesday, May 30th at 10 p.m. on Vice. Women of Wrestling has replaced MLW on Vice midnights on Tuesday nights. MLW was canceled on Reels. UFC, apparently, despite having an increase in revenue, paid fighters less in 2022. Basically, UFC is paying fighters a very low base pay rate, but the big stars get pay-per-view cuts, so the big stars make more. But overall, UFC pays fighters shit, so it'll be interesting to see if wrestlers' pay goes down in UFC. Hello, Locks, Pierre. Good morning, James from Victoria, Texas, where they bill Austin from. By the way, July 15th is the next Great North Wrestling event. Nunzio is going to face the Blood Hunter on this one. Carlito is also on the event, as well as Canadian champion Jeremy Prophet, who had the very first ever AEW match in Toronto last year. Riza says at least it's not steroids he's promoting for Hulk Hogan. No, but honestly, I would say steroids, I mean, depending on what you're taking, they're not going to affect your brain as much as a magic mushroom freakout could cause you. And again, I'm not hating on magic mushrooms. I'm just saying they can actually cause a person to go crazy. Under the right circumstances and supervision, you could have beneficial effects, but I wouldn't suggest to anyone to just go out and buy magic mushrooms and take a handful of them like Mike Tyson does. Yes, Ric Flair has a weed line too. And I'm not hating on weed. I'm just saying for new people taking weed, you really want to start low and test yourself on them. I mean, I do have a friend whose wife had back pain and ate like a weed candy bar because weed is legal here in Canada, and she had a complete freak out. I mean, she was in her 50s at the time, but I mean, to make the blanket statement that weed and mushrooms are fine and pharmaceuticals are dangerous. I mean, you guys really. I wouldn't take his advice on that. I would start low on any of those. Jay says younger fans don't have the attention span. Well, I can't sit through. I mean, I heard that Raw recently only had 20 minutes of wrestling in a 3-hour show. All that talking. I mean, I can't sit through it either. What about Karen Jarrett and AEW? I haven't been watching it. I really don't know. Stone Cold, I mean, he probably got a large amount of money for his television show, but I don't know if this is going to hurt his brand having that show such a big failure. Someone says Karen Jarrett and AEW. I don't know, man. I don't care about Karen Jarrett, the ex Karen Angle. I good for her if she's under AEW contract, but I have no interest in watching a cougar. The Outrunners today, greatest tag team. There you go. All right, guys. Wish everybody a great weekend. By the way, I think the Ken Patera interview with Jack Kilby is rescheduled for this weekend. Something came up where he had to cancel on Wednesday. I've got interviews coming up with the Gobbledygooker, Hector Guerrero, as well as Greg Valentine. And I'm looking forward to those. There's an old school fans. It says the quality of names make no difference to him. A good story. I don't care about stories. It's matches I care about. As far as stories, the Mega Powers was a good one. Ultimate Warrior Hogan build up was a good one. I don't call them stories. I call them match build-ups. I'm not a fan of all this talk about storytelling in wrestling. I call it match build-up. But whatever. Call it whatever you want. Whatever makes you happy. I will be watching. I canceled my WWE Network subscription, which is different in Canada, and it's terrible. And having it for like 3 months, I still haven't figured out how to stream it to a television. And I've figured out how to stream every single other service to television. But since there's a 30-day cancellation thing, I'm still going to watch. Tomorrow at 1 p.m., I'm going to do a watch along for the Saudi Arabia pay-per-view. Hogan and Austin. Hogan was the biggest WCW star when Austin was the biggest WWE star. The two biggest stars colliding. Never happened. That's why it makes sense.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video